the Biden regime, the Brandon regime in America is basically the Achashverosh regime. What is Achashverosh? Uh, First, let's look at what the Vilna Gaon says. What's the difference between Rasha and Ra? I don't know which one translates better. One's evil, one is wicked. Which one's which? Perhaps there is no difference in English. But the Vilna Gaon says a Rasha is a person being Adam Lamakom. His sins are between him and God. For example, the type of person who engages in Gilur Rayos without victimizing anybody and Avodah Zarah. He worships idols. Whereas a Ra is a person who is a rapist, not just regular Gilui aroused because he's bad to other people, and he's a murderer. A Ra is being Adam lachaviro, between people. That's his type of sin. So Chazal say that Achashverosh was a Rasha, and the Rambam says Minastam Malchei Umus Ha'olam by default are usually considered, unless we know any better, we have proof to the contrary. We can assume that the kings of the world usually are rishaim. They are wicked in the sense that they will commit these types of sins. They are selfish, and we can assume that they are worshiping idols, and they do not keep, let's say, the rules of against Gilui Rayos. For example, and this was I said this quite a few times. People shouldn't be so enamored of Trump because he's an obvious Russia. He was an adulterer for many years of his life, and he probably worships himself. I'm willing to bet that he has a statue of himself somewhere. That's basically his god. Although I wouldn't consider him a Ra because he didn't do anything bad to me, and he's not generally the type of person who is, let's say, has animosity to the Jewish people. Whereas the Rishaim who are running the United States nowadays are also they're just the usual types. They have they're just better at self control and hiding it, but they're also Rishaim. However, now they're being Ra'im to the Jewish people, and this is something I did not know how to express to, let's say, friends and family who are still in America who were actually excited and supported the Brandons when they first came to power. It's terrible. They're just like Achashverosh allowed our enemies, and we gave the green light. Okay, you can kill the Jewish people. Not only that, he'll sponsor it. The Kesef Natunlach. I don't even need your bribe, as the Chazal in Maseches Megillah point out. So the Chazal didn't see Achashverosh as a tzaddik, and he was easily manipulated to do wrong to us, our enemies. Yeah, just allow it. You know, the regime currently is so-called sponsoring our military, even though it's just, yeah, you have to take the money, but then you have to do what we say. And they're sponsoring the bad guys. They don't do that, at least for, let's say, Ukraine, their pet cause. You know, give the Ukrainians as much as they can, and no limits to fight the Russians. I don't want to get involved in that war. I don't think anybody's right in that case. I'm not pro any side, but at least they give them the money and they let them do what they want. But for us, we're kept on a leash, and our enemies are also given money. It's though they're just trying to perpetuate this war and all the other terrible things they're doing with the sanctions. Did you know that not even 2 months ago, our neighbor, we've been living down the block from him for 15 years, Harel Sharvit, fell in Gaza. He was a soldier. And I learned with his father. I learned with his brother. His other brother has a farm. There's two surviving brothers now. And this other brother has been sanctioned by the United States and the few major European powers for the crime of being a Jewish farmer. And this is kind of funny. Remember, some people are saying, well, maybe these people have done some terrible crimes of some sort. One of these criminals who's been sanctioned showed up in the Knesset yesterday to speak. And the Sharvit boys were on Israeli TV just yesterday speaking and being encouraged and all that. They're the latest boogeymen, the latest scarecrows, the latest extremist, Kahanist, violent, racist settlers out there who are being attacked. And it's fairly clear that if they were up to anything criminal, remotely criminal, especially against, let's say, their kindly Ishmaelite neighbors, they would not be roaming free and doing TV interviews. So it's fairly clear that these people have done nothing wrong, but now their life savings have been confiscated from them by the banks and all sorts of other terrible things. And by the way, the rules that the Brandons are imposing are basically going to be used against the rest of us, you and me. If they could do that to him, then what's stopping them from seizing my money? Yeah. So the taking away these gezeros that they're imposing on us from afar without due process in another country is who are the Brandons? It's an expression referring to the Biden regime. Let's go, Brandon. Okay? So that's what they're doing. I've been told that that's a cheer. It's an anti-Biden cheer that they use in America. Um, it's a code word. So uh, back to this. That we see that, for example, in history, history has shown what did the Germans do before they really got into killing all the Jews? Gezerah after Gezerah. Did you know that there were Jews who were pro-Nazi in Nazi Germany at the very beginning? I think one of the guys' names was Gauman or something like that. Naumann. He was arrested eventually and sent to a concentration camp and was there mostly through the 30s until he died. I'm sure he regretted his mistake of being pro-Nazi. There's some people who are pro the current regime because they're lifelong blue team, and it's the blue team, so that's who they're pro, and they still don't realize the grave mistake they've done by supporting Achashverosh, who's now basically doing all the worst things against us. It's quite terrible. We have to turn to God and pray that He remove such people, and along with the rest of our enemies. So Achashverosh, by the way, how would we don't concern with tzaddik in any way. How did Achashverosh? How is it that we survived? Why do we celebrate what happened in his days? It's because his lust for a Jewish woman allowed her to help her people. And yeah, they've been talking too much about this, the suicidal dependency that we have on America and how we have to support the military-industrial complex. It's really, really bad. Okay, so I remember this. This was similar to my neighbors who celebrated the last elections and the formation of the most right-wing government in Israel's history. They made a kiddush. I couldn't believe what they were doing. Okay? You have to first see what they're up to, and the biggest disappointment was that without pressure from the left or the alphabet people or foreigners, maybe it was very quiet about this. The first thing that the so-called right-wing government did, its first act was to appoint a speaker of the Knesset. By the way, the speaker of the Knesset also has a few ceremonial duties in Israel. A lot of ceremonial duties are carried out by the president, and we have a president's wife in this country, but she never does anything really. She's very much out of the spotlight. She barely appears with her husband, if anything. I'm not talking even about the current president and first lady. I'm talking about all of them in history. People even know what Rabin's wife looked like. It's almost non-existent that position, and the Speaker of the Knesset is the number two in all ceremonial positions here in Israel, aside from having a legislative capacity. So they appointed a blatant alphabet person, and the so-called other right-wing parties and the religious parties, which is basically supporting this coalition, the Haredi religious parties, the non-Haredi religious parties among the Haredi have the Ashkenazic descent ones and the Sephardic descent ones, even though for some reason they can't get along with each other. So they didn't object to this. So that's a terrible thing. That's a sin. And people, like I said, celebrate this government. It's only brought us ruin. We have to look for only those who have Yiras Shamayim and want to keep the Torah. That's the only thing you can vote for. That's the only thing you could support. So you pray that if you have a regime in among the nations of the world that, like we said last week, I'll read this here. Uh, God does not ask of the Gentiles to love him, nor does he ask of them to serve him, not through sacrifice, nor through prayer. All he demands of them is to maintain law and order and not violate six clear and rational prohibitions. And he also gave them us, loyal and faithful Jewish people, to emulate. And if a society fails at that, then they can only expect to decline and perish. So we can only hope that the Rishaim who run foreign countries are at least good to us. That is, they don't meddle with us. That'd be great. And if they want to help us, they want to give us money. They want us to fight our enemies for us. They want to do our farming for us. That's fine. That's the messianic vision. They should realize that Kohanim are to Jewish people. That's the priestly class among us. Are Kohanim are to Jewish people as Jewish people are to the rest of humanity, and people should recognize that. So we hope that the regime, the European regimes, the American regimes, they are not long for this earth. And here in Israel also, we're looking for a way to replace the current our current rulers with those who actually have fear of God and want to keep His Torah. That's the best we can hope for, and hopefully we'll be given the chance, nice and peacefully, to change our own regime. So yeah, let's let's see. They're really ratcheting up the anti-Semitism. I can't stories here and there, all over the place. It's just you read the news more than I do, but you have to learn how to read it better, and you have to know who to watch out for.